Welcome to another episode of the PPSS Show. My name is Fong. I'm an entrepreneur, business strategist, real estate investor, speaker, also best-selling author, and every single day I help others unlock potentials to guide them to succeed. Today on the show, we have another fascinating guest. On the show, we interview celebrities, entrepreneurs, business CEOs, athletes, and artists to find out their path to success, how they're able to overcome challenges, adversity, and of course, their keys to success. And today's guest is somebody who's been helping a lot of people in real estate overcome challenges, adversities, and becoming more and more successful going through that process. In fact, he is somebody who's been out there for a long time. I've heard his name many, many times when I first started, and he's played a part in my success as I've read a few of his books, and I was surprised that, hey, I'm going to get this person on my show, so I'm going to be very, very excited to have him here. He is the creator of the Money Partner Formula. He works with a lot of capital risers at leveraging their network to attract that JV partner, that money partner, that investor, that private investor, without being desperate, without being high pressure, because that's very, very important when it comes to leveraging relationships, building relationships, and growing those relationships so that it could be successful in working relationships in real estate and investing. He helps attract those investors for his clients, also with regards to the marketing strategies and marketing services as well. Very, very excited. So please welcome podcast host of Property Profits, real estate investor and entrepreneur, author, speaker, trainer, Mr. Dave Dubeau.
Fong, wow. You pack a lot in a short period of time, my friend. I can't talk that fast, but I'll try my best to keep up. Thanks for
I
having me
try
on your
to
show.
cram as much of those accreditations that you have because man, you are somebody who's been there for a long time, been there very, very successful for a long time, and I'm very, very excited to have you here because, like I said, I have a few of your books and I've learned a lot from you, and you are somebody who's been able to add so much value to the people who listens to you, people who learn from you, and you've just done a lot of great things for people in real estate. So thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having me on your show, Fong. And I had the pleasure of having you on my show a little while ago. So there you go. It goes
Awesome.
back and forth.
Thank you very much.
I'm learning from you as well.
What's your origin story? Have you always thought about doing real estate at the very beginning?
Wow. Origin story. Yeah. Well, it's getting to be quite a while ago when I originated. Actually, thinking back, I kind of grew up around real estate investing. My family home as a kid was actually one unit in a sixplex that my father and grandfather actually built together. Seemed kind of normal to me to have a bunch of tenants around. Um, then growing up, my mother became a real estate investor, so she and my father split up, and there she was. She was a working single mom raising a snot-nosed kid, me, and she built up a portfolio of about 50 units way back in the 70s and 80s when that wasn't very common, and especially wasn't all that common for women to do that on their own. So I kind of grew up around that. Unfortunately, I didn't pay very much attention to that, Fong. It's not like I jumped right into real estate investing. That took a while, and after I graduated from university, I started traveling around Central America and Mexico, ended up down in San Jose, Costa Rica, really liked Costa Rica. So I actually settled down there and lived down there for 10 years, got married, had kids, had my own business down there. That's when I started, when I was about 20, I guess I was 24, started my first business, a language training company. So that was my foray into entrepreneurship. It was kind of interesting because it was kind of the opposite. We hear about all these illegal aliens coming to North America. Well, I was a illegal alien moving, moving to Latin America. So there it was. I was in Costa Rica. I was not legal. I was starting a new business in a foreign country in a foreign language and the whole bit. And at the time, I think I only had about $1,500 to my name, and that's how I got started and somehow made a go of it. Had 10 good years down there, and then I decided to move my Costa Rican wife and kids, well, to Canada and start over from scratch in 2003. So that's when I really got serious about real estate investing.
Wow. What kind of childhood was that? To grow up in a family who was in the industry, building homes and in a sixplex, and then having a mom who is out there investing, buying real estate. What was that like for you?
Normal. typical dysfunctional family stuff, right? But no, it seemed normal to me because hey, that's how I grew up. That probably inspired me a little bit towards the entrepreneur side of things, even though my mother was a school teacher by trade. My father was a union guy, heavy duty equipment operator. They were both big time NDP supporters, but even even so, I kind of had that entrepreneurial flair there. So,
Mm.
yeah, and it wasn't like my father and my grandfather were active builders. They built that property, which really was, looking back on it, was my grandparents' retirement fund, right? Because my grandfather had been an entrepreneur and
Mm.
kind of sold his business, and I don't know how much he got for it, but basically the sixplex was free and clear, and that's what they were using for a good chunk of their revenue, and that helped support my father and his old age as well. So it was more
Mm.
of a retirement fund. My mother was definitely building up for wealth. Unfortunately, this is way before your time, but in the 1980s, mid 80s, early 80s, um, interest rates went insane. Everybody's complaining about them now. Back then, it got up to 17, 18, 19%. And unfortunately, that sunk her real estate business at that time. But even in spite of that, she kind of, even in her retirement years, she always had some sort of rental properties, a few rental properties here and there going along. So yeah, it was a
I
big part of my upbringing.
find that interesting that you mentioned that your mom was a school teacher,
Yeah.
and schools don't really teach investing, business, entrepreneurship mindset. Yet she's out there doing all this stuff. So, as as her child, were you looking at other kids going, "You don't know what's really going on"? I mean, I know what's
Not at
going
all. Not
on.
not at all. I was clueless, man. So I was just I did admire my mother because she was a very strong person and you know, juggled a lot of different things and did it with good humor and stuff. But yeah, my memory of her was she was working a lot. So she was working her full-time job and then she self-managed everything that she had. She actually built an apartment building, a small apartment building, I think a 14 unit or something like that from the ground up. So I remember her being very, very busy outside of her normal working hours, kind of managing her properties and doing the books and all that kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, I was a typical teenager. I was self-centered. I didn't pay that much attention to it.
What do you think part of the reason why you didn't jump into real estate right away was because you saw how much stress or how much work was being put in?
Oh yeah, I think that had something to do with it. Plus, I mean, the trauma of my poor mother going through
Mm.
losing that whole portfolio that she'd spent decades building up. Bang, it's kind of swept out from under her all in one fell swoop. So that was definitely traumatizing for her, shook things up for all of us. I mean, we had to move around and she lost, lost the property we're living in kind of thing and this and that
Mm.
and the other thing. So yeah, it was a challenging time for her. So that might have turned me off of it for a while. But like I say, she didn't go get back into that scale. She fortunately for her, she had a really good teacher's pension and she'd been a teacher for a long time, but she still bought some investment properties and subsidized her pension with that as well.
So take us to your very first property that you were invested in and you bought and you were on the title and all that kind of stuff. How did that feel and what was that process like for you?
Yeah, you know what? I don't know if I ever went on title. The first one, the first, actually think back, the first two real estate deals I did were actually in Costa Rica, and they would be what I guess we would call pre-foreclosure properties. And I invested those through a lawyer and another gentleman that had this kind of little company. So I guess I might have been a joint venture partner on those kind of things because I put up most, if not all, of the money. They did all the work, and
Mm.
I got a pretty good. They got their fees and a chunk of the profit. I got the other chunk of the profit. So that was kind of my first foray, but I didn't really understand what was going on. And frankly, I was just lucky.
I find it fun that lots of investors like yourself and myself, when we're talking about that first investment or first property, it usually ends with, yeah, I didn't know what was going on, but hope it was nice that it worked out kind of
Yeah,
thing.
if you're still in the business, chances are it worked out okay. But I do remember when I came back to Canada, it was an interesting situation, Fong. You can probably relate to this as an entrepreneur. So I'd left my business in Costa Rica. I hadn't been able to sell it and moved the whole family to Canada. So I was basically starting all over again from scratch. We moved to the city I live in now, which is called Kamloops, a small city about at that time about 80,000 people. And I knew I was pretty much unemployable. I'd been self-employed for a good chunk of time. Wasn't really qualified for any kind of job. So it'd be like working at McDonald's if I went to get a job. That wasn't going to cut it. So I was like, okay, well, what the heck am I going to do now? And I thought about different things. My brother was a financial planner at the time. So I went and took the Canadian securities course to become a financial planner, and then got to the part about mutual funds and thought to myself, there's no way I would buy these things. I don't really want to sell these to anybody else. So scrapped that idea, looked at a few different things. But one back in those days, they had these infomercials on TV. I don't know if you remember those, but YouTube can get rich in real estate type stuff, right? With little or no money down. So I saw one of these American gurus doing this TV infomercial, and he said, "You can get rich in real estate, little or no money." I said, "Perfect, because that's what I've got, little to no money." Sent away for the course, got it, big binders and CDs, and I think a VHS cassette tape or two in there as well. And I went through all of this stuff, and it was kind of make it or break it. I had my back against the wall, so I took massive action, Fong, and ended up doing 18 deals in 18 months. Was my first kick of the can at doing real estate. And it was all these kind of creative, wonky American style real estate deals. Some of them were really quite lucrative. Others were just basic little, churn type things like with mobile homes and mobile home parks and that sort of thing, but enough to, you know, pay the bills and that sort of thing. So I got very, very good at attracting motivated sellers because all of those deals were done without cold calling anybody, without knocking on any doors. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it was all done through marketing and getting people to reach out to me about their problematic properties. So that was what kept me busy for the first couple of years that I was actively a real estate investor.
That
Lots
is
of
awesome.
business.
Was 18 and 18 a goal, a number that you had set, or just kind of happened that way?
Just kind of happened that way. The goal was pay the bills.
But those infomercials, and I know there's those ads and all that kind of stuff out there even today. Lots of people apply, lots of people attend those sessions and learn from the gurus, the experts, but a lot of them don't follow through, don't
Oh man.
succeed. What do you think is the determining factor from the ones that do succeed versus the ones that don't?
You know what? It's so interesting you ask that, Fong, because I remember I took that program, got the binders and stuff. And then I'd also at that time, I had joined the Real Estate Investment Network, RAIN, right? Run by Don Campbell at that time. And that was based primarily in Alberta, but they had a little branch office in BC and whatnot. And the guy that I bought the course from, his name is Ron LeGrand. He was the kind of the quick turn kind of guy.
Mhm.
And Rain, coincidentally, so I got that course like in April or something like that. Rain brought him to Edmonton in July of that same year. And so a big thing. And it was like quite expensive. My memory was it was like 5K to go to this 3-day thing with Ron. And then he gave me all the courses I already bought. That's bonuses. But I remember I went to this 3-day seminar and actually took my mother with me just for fun. I thought she might enjoy that. She was retired and all that kind of stuff at the time. Um, but there were like 300 people at that seminar. And one of the things they did during the 3 days was they separated everybody by geographic region. So all the people from BC, we got together and there was about 75 or 80 of us from BC there. And I remember we're all networking and somebody said, "Hey, you know what? We should start a support group for everybody that's going through this program and get together once a week and help each other out and all this kind of stuff." And I said, "Great," because I was flying solo in Kamloops. Like I didn't know any other real estate investors. I was just doing my own thing kind of thing. So we got that organized, and Kamloops to Vancouver is well, it was actually, these are being held in Richmond. So Kamloops to Richmond is about a 4-hour drive in good traffic each way. right?
Mhm.
So they decided we were going to have these meetings on Saturday mornings at 10 or 11 a.m. So, okay, no problem. I'm keen. So I jump in my I Buy Houses minivan, all deckled up with I Buy Houses stuff. Zip into Vancouver, get there for 10 o'clock. So that means I left at like 5:30. And I go to this first meeting, and it was pretty impressive. There were like 35 or 40 people in the room, and everybody's all juiced up, and we've got our binders and all this stuff. And I'm actively already been doing deals for a while, right? And they go, okay, here's our goal. Let's baby step this thing. So for next week, everybody, Ron says we really should have some business cards. I Buy Houses business cards. So our job for next week is have your business cards ready. I'm going, have your business cards ready? Gee, I'm doing deals. I got all this stuff going, but whatever. I'll be
You
patient.
drove and you drove 5 hours. I drove 5 hours to be told I need a business card for next week. You mean I have to come back next week for another 5 hours?
Yeah, so I'm a glutton for punishment. So I go back and do my thing. And next Saturday, jump in the minivan, head off to Vancouver, get there. It's gone from 40 some people, drastically reduced to like 20 people. Nobody had done their damn business cards, like nobody. So I'm starting to get a little steamed. It's all rah, rah, rah and love fest. Get back in the car. Next week, I get there. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back. It had started at 40 some people. Second week, 20 people. Third week I got there, there was seven of us.
Oh man.
Seven of us. Nobody had their business cards. One lady had not read much of the training materials, but she had read something about classified ads. And that's when newspapers were still fairly big, right? So she had taken out classified ads in the Vancouver Sun and the Vancouver Province, the two biggest newspapers. She'd spent $2,000 on classified ads that says, I buy houses, any condition, any place, any price, and her phone number. And these newspapers got distributed all across the province. So she had gotten overwhelmed with people from everywhere calling her. She hadn't read the rest of the course. She didn't know how to deal with. She did. So she's just and she blew $2,000 on this. And I just lost it. I said, "You guys are all idiots. I am never coming back here. All the best." And I got the minivan and went home and that. So that's a very long story to illustrate exactly what you said. That lots of people take these programs, very few people actually take action. What was the difference for me? Um, Experience being my own boss. I mean, that's what I've been doing for 10 plus years. I understood the fact that if you want anything to happen as an entrepreneur, you have to make it happen. Nobody else is going to do it for you, especially at the beginning when you don't have any employees. So it's all about taking massive, imperfect action at the beginning. Your ducks are never going to be all perfectly lined up. You just got to get going and kind of fumble and bubble your way through because it's never going to be perfect, right? So that's probably the big benefit I had. The other thing was, quite frankly, I didn't have it. It was kind of like my boats were burned kind of thing. So I wasn't going to go back to Costa Rica. Um, I had to figure something out. I had my wife and two little kids with me. I was the sole income earner for the family. Uh, in Costa Rica, we had a pretty good standard of living. We had a nice upper middle class standard of living with live-in maid and gardener and gated community and all that kind of stuff. So my Costa Rican wife was accustomed to a kind of a better lifestyle than that we now had in Canada, living in a rental townhouse in the not so great side of town and all that stuff. So there's a lot of pressure on me to get my what together and generate some income.
Mhm. Would you say that people who are comfortable is less likely to succeed in starting real estate?
Yeah, yeah, I would. You got to be
And
hungry
how,
for it, right?
and
So
and then how would you like, for instance, I'm sure you have lots of clients who are comfortable and they're like, hey, we would like to jump into real estate. What do you recommend? And I'm pretty sure you're not going to recommend them, you know what? Go and quit your job and get yourself into this stress and anxiety, then you'll make it. Like what's your recommendation for those people?
for somebody who's comfortable, You know what? You got to find, I mean, obviously you're not that comfortable or you wouldn't be interested in real estate. So maybe financially you're paying the bills, you're doing okay, but you're probably uncomfortable because you're working for somebody else. They're telling you what to do, they're controlling your time, they're controlling your income. You're doing what everybody gets into real estate is looking for. You're looking for financial freedom and time freedom and location freedom, all those freedom things, right? So you have to dial up your discomfort somewhere. So you gotta, you don't necessarily need to quit your job to give yourself the motivation, but you have to remind yourself, what is it that you hate about your current situation? What is it you want to change about your current situation? What is it that you want to achieve for yourself and your family? And you have to create your own discomfort to break free from those chains of financial stability that you're getting from your job, right? So, simple tip that sounds corny and it's overused, but a vision board is big. Like actually do a vision board. Don't do it on your computer. Manually put one together with what is it that you want to accomplish, what is it that you want to do,
Mhm.
and then look at it for a few minutes every single day. Have it somewhere. Probably not in your office cubicle. That might tick your boss off, but something like that. So, you know, that would be a recommendation. And quite frankly, Fong, years ago, I used to try coaching and teaching and training people about real estate investing 101. That was a big challenge I had, was just dealing with people that kind of thought maybe they might want to get a real estate, but really didn't apply themselves to be successful. So I got tired of that. And these days, for the last many years, I only work with people who are already successful real estate investors. So that saves that whole having to babysit people and feed them pablum to get them motivated.
I see. You mentioned at the very beginning, one of the downfalls that kind of affected your mom's portfolio was the whole mortgage rates and whatnot. Lots
Mm.
of people complaining about mortgage rates right now. Lots of people are struggling because of the mortgage rates have gone up.
Yep.
How do you mitigate around that? When you buy properties, when you coach your clients or help your clients get into investing, how do you mitigate around the whole mortgage issue?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't, to be perfectly frank, I'm not a coach, first of
Mhm.
all. So I'm not coaching anybody about interest rates. Myself personally, these days, for the last quite a while, I've been investing passively, not actively. I kind of realized years ago I suck as a landlord. I don't enjoy property management either. So I let people that are good at that do that. So I really don't coach around that. And the other thing I realized, Fong, was with the pandemic, is that a lot of so-called real estate experts, nobody's got a very good crystal ball about what's going to be happening. I remember when COVID hit and everybody got locked down, everybody's world got turned upside down. My world definitely was turned upside down because up until that point, for generating leads for my consulting business, I did live events across the country, right? So I was so proud of myself. I had my entire first 6 months of 2020 all planned out with event. Poof, off it went, away it went. And I'm kind of, punchy at that time, not sure what to do. So I thought, hey, you know what? I think everybody's freaking out about what's going on with real estate. So I decided to gather all of the or a lot of the Canadian gurus I knew in the real estate space and put on a marathon, like 4 hour webinar.
Mhm.
And wow, was that a hit? We had over, I think, close to 4,500 people register for that webinar. I had 18 experts, gurus, coaches, whatever, all in the Canadian real estate investing space. And each one of us had like 5 minutes or 6 minutes or something like that to do your thing, or I can't, 8 minutes, whatever it was. It was a short period of time, and I had a set series of questions for everybody. And basically, everybody I said, "Hey, what's your take on what's going to happen with the real estate market with this coronavirus, as we called it at that time?" And every single person, myself included, except for one person, almost everybody, all but one, 17 out of 18 of us predicted doom and gloom for the Canadian and North American real estate market, right? Because people are out of work. CERB had not kicked in yet. Couldn't kick people out of their apartments or, if they stopped paying rent and all this stuff. So it just looked really, really bad. The only guy that got it right was Stefan Arnio. I don't know if you remember Stefan Arnio, but young guy, very, very sharp. He was into flipping, but he was really brilliant mind too, very well read. And unfortunately, I didn't know it at the time. He was dying of cancer. So he came on this webinar that we were doing literally about 1 month before he died. And he got on there, and what he was talking about was just radical. It was the exact opposite of what the rest of us were. He said, "No, I think the real estate market's going to really take off. Supply and demand is in our favor." And then he also made some really scary, accurate predictions. He said, "I'm not sure what's going to go on in the States. I think they're on the verge of a civil war." And he was talking about Democrats and Republicans and all this kind of stuff. And this was way before anything happened with Capitol Hill riots and all that kind of stuff. But he kind of predicted how divisive that country was getting. And everybody else is just kind of in shock listening to all these crazy ideas this guy's throwing around. But guess who was the closest to right? It was him. So yeah, but long story short, my crystal ball sucks. I don't try to give any predictions anymore because nobody really knows. And give you an example. Even people that we really look up to, and I know you and I are both big fans of Robert Kiyosaki, right? Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He's wrong more often than he's right. I can remember as I was working with, we were putting on events right around the time of the big meltdown in 08, 09 in the States. And we had Kiyosaki Zoom in or video conference in at that time for one of these events. And here's all us little Canadians looking forward to listening to Rich Dad. It was like 2 or 3 days after that whole collapse, Lehman Brothers and stuff. And he came on and he was freaking out. Like literally, he was shaken. He was really put off. And he said, invest in the three G's. Okay, what are the three G's? Gold. Buy as much gold as you possibly can. Grub. Stock up on non-perishable goods and have a whole room filled and guns. So that was the three thing. Gold, grub, and guns. The apocalypse is going to happen. The zombies are going to come take over, rape, pillage, and steal everything that you've got. Just hunker down. It might have had a fourth one, gas, like stock up on. So we're all just kind of go like this. Did any of that come to pass? No, it did not. No.
Right.
Is he going to be right eventually? I don't. Yeah, of course. Everybody's right eventually, but don't trust the gurus. Is my advice.
He should have said toilet paper. I mean,
Nobody. Yeah, that was the pandemic. Nobody.
something that you're very, very good at, which you talked about before, is that you're able to attract motivated sellers.
Yeah.
And now you're very good at attracting private money, private investors. Is there similarities with that? And if so, what is some of those tips and advice that you have for people to? I know you have a whole formula. You don't have to share all of it, but like some things that people could actually implement right now so that they can get that started.
Well, it depends. I know we hate this answer, but it really depends on where the person is, Fong. So walk me through a scenario. Who are we talking to as a real estate investor? Is somebody just getting into it? Somebody who's already actively investing? Somebody who's already super successful? Because different.
Let's say it's somebody who's just started, basically where you were at, no money, no credit, no nothing. And
so raising capital at that stage, you're probably not going to be able to do it. Okay, you got to be realistic. Is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? No, it's highly unlikely. But there's still solutions. So if you're brand new to real estate investing and you don't have very much money and you don't have any experience, you got to be logical and think, why the hell would anybody invest with you, right? You got no track record, you got no proof of concept, you don't know what the hell you're doing. Why, especially in Canada, why would somebody invest it? It's going to be at least a 100 grand, probably a lot more to get you into for the 20% down closing costs, yada yada. So you're probably looking at one to $200,000 to get into any kind of property.
Yeah.
Um, who's going to do that? Who's nobody in their right mind is going to invest with you. Maybe your parents, if they really, if they got deep pockets and they really love you, but that's about it. Nobody else in their right mind will do that. Well, Dave, that's not a very positive message. No, it's not, but it's a real message. So, what can you do if you're in that situation? No experience, no money. You've got to get experience, right? You're not going to get the money with it's a chicken and the egg, catch 22.
Yep.
So, what I recommend is, if at all possible, use your own money for your own first deal. Get that first deal going with self-financing. Okay, I don't have the money, Dave. Okay. Second choice is bring value to somebody else. So figure it out what it is that you want to do in the real estate space. Get some education around that, and ideally find somebody in your area who's already doing it successfully and offer to work for equity for that person. Do not be looking for a paycheck, but figure out what is it that you can bring of value to that guy or that gal. So that is worth it for them to give you even a tiny sliver. And don't expect very much equity because you don't deserve it, right? But a tiny sliver of equity in that deal. So work for equity. Sweat equity is what this is called. You don't necessarily have to be great at swinging a hammer or construction or demolition or anything like that, but figure out what does that person need. So if you're really good at social media stuff and they're not, offer to do that for them, whatever that looks like. If you're willing to get out there, if they're looking for deals and you can go spend some time door knocking, you can spend times putting out flyers, you can generate leads for them, then do that. If you're good at bookkeeping and they need some help with that, well, take that over for them. And again, don't be working for a paycheck. Have an agreement where you're working for a tiny sliver of equity in one of their deals. Okay. And then don't just be a passive investor in the deal. Explain to them, hey, I want to provide value for you, but I also want to learn on the job. So I'd like to be very actively involved and do grunt work, do whatever is required. In fact, I had one client that did this. He's brilliant, right? The guy's my age. He didn't have much real estate investing experience. He wanted to get some. So I actually recommended that to him. I connected him with a couple of other clients that I was working with at the time. They hit it off and he joined forces with them. He did exactly that. He worked for equity. So he was working a full-time job. He had a family, the whole bit, but he would take time and go onto the work site and do whatever it was that they needed help with. So he'd sweep stuff out, haul garbage, do manual labor type stuff. And he was not a manual labor kind of guy, but he did it. It didn't matter. Then they kind of figured out where his strengths were, and he was really good with like investor relation type stuff. So they got him involved with that. So bottom line, they ended up within 6 months, they became partners and they've done lots of deals together. So just bring value to the table first. And then once you've got that first deal done, make sure you document it. Then you've got proof of concept. Now you can go to prospective investors and say, hey, here's a deal that I was involved in. Don't say it's your property, but you can say, I'm a partner on this property, and you are, even if you got half of 1% equity in that, or 1% or 2%, whatever it is. Point out and show them how it worked. Now you got a foot to stand on.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, Fong?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when I first started, my first private money investor was my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And then after two of those properties, plus another two properties that we did on by ourselves, we now have a portfolio and a working concept to then talk to other people. And, hey, we have these, we're working
Yeah.
on these, and here's the results. What do you think about this and all that kind of stuff?
Made it so much easier, didn't it? You had proof of concept, and you waited till you had four, so now you had a preponderance of
Yeah.
proof, not just one. You can start with one, but what you did was really smart.
Awesome. When you move forward to people who are looking for multi-million dollars for capital raising,
Yeah.
what's the strategy on that? Because I know a lot of people out there who develops this whole PowerPoint presentation and portfolio and all that kind of stuff. How important is that stuff versus something else that you would recommend?
Hmm. For the longest time, I was working with the mom and pop real estate investors who had a few, like you were when you started raising capital. Like you had a few deals under your belt. Mom and dad helped you out with a couple. You self financed a couple. Now you're ready to bring on outside people. For many, many years, you were it. You were the kind of person I would work with to help you get started with raising capital. And yes, a pitch deck is important, but the right kind, not uh, pretty simple, right? Because here's a big lesson I learned is that a lot of the people you're going to approach about investing in your deals are not real estate weirdos like you and I, right? So if we've got this huge presentation and we've got spreadsheets and we've got data and we've got all this stuff that us real estate nerds enjoy,
Mhm.
and we've got all this jargon and even basic stuff like ROI, NOI, cap rates, all these kind of things that gets bantered around all the time in real estate. And we start doing that to a normal person who's not a real estate investor yet. Their eyes glaze over, they get bored, they feel stupid because they don't understand what's going on. And anybody that's bored and feeling stupid is not going to invest in your deal, right? So learn quickly that you got to keep your presentation very visual, very high impact, very simple layman's terms in there, and always focus on what's in it for them versus what a stud you are, right? That should kind of come through naturally, your expertise. But I see so many people just beating their chest, with all these amazing headshots and all this kind of stuff to kind of build the brand and whatnot. Focus on what's in it for your investor, how they're going to make money, how they're going to get covered, how they're going to get paid out before you do. Don't show all the sunshine and flowers. Show them the potential pitfalls of the deal, and also what you're going to do to minimize the chance of that happening. And should it happen, what you're going to do to deal with it, to manage it,
Mhm.
right? So those would be some just big broad strokes recommendations. Now, moving from that to what you asked in the first place, people that want or need to raise millions. So I assume you're kind of talking about syndicators. Would that be fair to say? Yeah, it's actually not that much different as far as the presentation goes. We assume that because now we're starting to look for accredited investors, we're assuming that because they got a lot more money and net worth, that they're a lot more financially astute when it comes to real estate investing. Big mistake. Still keep it super simple. They're not dumb,
Mhm.
but don't ever assume somebody knows about as much about real estate investing as you do as a prospective money partner, right?
Mhm.
So keep it super simple. The marketing is different. So for the first group of people, you when you're first getting started, I would recommend focusing on your existing network, people that you already have that relationship with. That can probably help you raise your first 1 to 2 million within that network. Once you've tapped that out and now you're ready to go to the next level, we've just started something pretty cool helping people with this. And that is with a lead generation podcast show. So, what we do is we set these capital raisers up with their own podcast, their own show, kind of like what you've got, what I've got.
Mhm.
And instead of trying to get them coaches and experts and authors and gurus on the show like everybody else does, we focus on okay, who is your ideal investor avatar? And for most people, it's high income, high net worth people, right? So professionals, doctors, lawyers, accountants, yada, yada, engineers, those kind of people. C suite executives are up there. And then business owners, quite frankly. Those are usually kind of the majority of what makes up accredited investors, right? So we focus the show on attracting those people as guests. So we get them, we do the lead generation for them, we set up the podcast for them, we get them 5 interviews booked consistently every week.
Wow.
They crank out those 5 interviews, and I keep them fairly short, so 20 to 30 minutes. So 1 3 hour chunk of time, they can get all of those interviews done for the week. And then our team takes all of that content, edits it, creates a video version, creates the audio version, uploads it, schedules it, and all the podcast platforms, does all of that stuff for them. And now they're interviewing somebody that is their ideal investor. They're starting that relationship, but they're providing value first, right?
Mm.
Hey, be a guest on my show. I'm going to elevate you. You're going to be on my platform. So you lead with the giving hand, and most self-employed people, business owners, professionals, etc., they like getting exposure. They like free PR. They like marketing. They like to be able to kind of strut their stuff a little bit. So we make them shine, talk about what they do to be successful, what's worked, what challenges they've overcome. So we provide good value for the listener, right? Some good, like you do, good inspirational education. And then towards the end, we massage the conversation towards, what they're doing to create financial freedom in the future for themselves and their family, create legacy, that sort of thing. So kind of nudge the conversation towards investing. And then we wrap it up. And at the end, once we've stopped the recording, then we say, hey, say it was you and I, Fong. I'd say, hey, Fong, really cool what you're up to in your business. And I love the fact that you're poking around a little bit with cryptocurrency. You've had some success with that. Now, let me ask you, have you ever considered alternative investments like, let's say, multifamily properties? We're working with some folks that are kind of similar to you that are enjoying all of the stability and the 8 different profit centers that real estate apartment buildings can provide without having to be a landlord or deal with tenants and toilets. Is that something you might be interested in taking a look at? And then you book them into a follow-up conversation where you walk them through your simple big picture presentation. And then the goal at the end of the presentation is, if they're interested, get them to sign off on an expression of interest, right? So now you put them in your prospective investor pool, you keep up the communications with them. And then, ideally, you're getting a bunch of these investors lined up, ready to go. And then you're also looking for deals at the same time, and you marry the two, and voila.
Nicely done. I think my next question was already kind of you have a few nuggets that you've already given, and that is when it comes to sales, when it comes to finding the private investors and money lenders, desperation and high pressure is one of those things that people kind of experience. You talked
Yeah.
about adding value first, making sure that it's beneficial to the other party, but that's all nice and said and done. It's hard to control those emotions when somebody goes, "Well, yes, I'm adding value, I'm adding value, I'm adding value." How does one control those emotions to still add value, but not come across desperate and also high pressure?
Yeah, good question. And I've been in that boat, Fong, so I'm chuckling because I know exactly how that feels. And the reason I got in that boat is because I listened to a guru, many gurus who said, hey, just find a good deal and the money will find you. So I did. I found a really good deal. And then I started scrambling for the cash. And I only had like 2 weeks. It wasn't a big deal, a
Mm.
single family home. I only had 2 weeks to come up with the money. Well, that makes you kind of desperate, right? So the long and the short of it is, wherever possible, try to line up your investors before you've got a deal on the go. That will take all of the pressure off because you're not desperate to raise the capital for that money immediately. Get your chickens lined up first, get those uh, potential investors signed off on expressions of interest. And then when you've got a deal, ideally you've got more investors lined up than you actually need. So you can go in there and it's the exact opposite. You can kind of go, hey guys, here's what I got available. First come, first serve, right? What's what, and then the ones that don't jump on it quickly, you say, sorry, sold out, right? And that generates the exact opposite. That generates demand. It's
Mm.
supply and demand. So when you've got more investors lined up than you need, more investors lined up than you've got deals, that creates a good kind of pressure on you versus the negative pressure. So I don't know if that answered your question.
No, that's good because what people don't do is they don't plan for what may come. and they scramble when they have the contract in place. They have 10 days to sort it out, and now they're really scrambling, and you can't hide that emotion.
Oh no, that it just it oozes out of every pore in your body. And what I'm like the strategy I was talking, both all of the strategies I was talking about, it's not a quick turnaround, I need cash tomorrow type thing.
Right.
It's get things set up, get those investors lined up, and then offer them a deal when you've got it.
Mhm. Awesome. Our time here has gone by very fast. I
Yes,
got
it
one
is.
one more formal question for you, and that is, first of all, what's up next for you? What are you looking for? What's the next big thing? And then also any last kind of advice, success kind of tip for everybody out there.
Yeah, so the big thing we're working on is this whole turnkey done for you podcast lead generation thing. This is pretty new for us. We've got our first beta group of clients. It's just kind of we've got up and running and it's showing really good results early days. So that's really my focus probably for the next 6 months is to really get that dialed in and perfected. So that's what's going. My main business, Fong, is I've got a marketing agency for real estate investors that helps them to raise private capital. That's my main bread and butter. And then as far as parting words of advice, I just repeat, if you're watching this and you're thinking about leaving your 9 to 5 to become an entrepreneur, whether that's in real estate or anything else, the biggest thing that you can do to give yourself success is to really dial up your discomfort with your current situation. Like if you're just kind of happily where you're at and thinking it might be kind of nice to do this or that you're never going to make it with that kind of attitude. You've got to be in a bit of pain. You got quite a bit of pain. The more pain, the better. As weird as that sounds. That's what's going to motivate you to do what's needed. So again, figure out what you hate about your current situation and really focus on that. I know that sounds negative, but sometimes negative uh, motivation is much more positive than positive motivation. We are motivated more by fear of loss and by fear of pain than we are by gain. As
Mhm.
weird as that sounds, but that seems to be the human nature.
That seems to be the thing that's going on for a lot of people. I mean, I've talked to a lot of successful individuals, and I can tell you, a lot of pain has been shared.
Yeah, and as you know, it's not always a walk in the park. Most of the time, it isn't. There are times in my entrepreneurial journey I've definitely envied the employees.
Mhm.
Right, you can clock off of work. You don't have to think about it when you're an entrepreneur. You're thinking about your job. You're thinking about your work 247. It really is. It never stops. So that's
Exactly.
the pros and the cons.
What I find very common is that everybody I do talk to takes all the negative, all those stories of challenges and adversity. They tell those stories like it's entertainment now and what they've learned from it and how much
That's
fun it was.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's 2020 hindsight, right? At the moment it sucked, but yeah, later on it was all right.
Exactly. Well, before I let you go, five quick rapid fire questions. Give me the first
Go.
thing that comes to mind. One food to eat for the rest of your life, no consequence if you were stranded on a desert island.
One food to eat, Chinese buffet.
Ah, nice. Especially when it's no consequence.
It has to be, yeah, because there are consequences to that.
Hollywood calls and says, "Hey Dave, we love your story, very inspirational. We would love to do a biopic of you. Who would you cast to play you?"
Well, obviously Brad Pitt.
Of course. Brad Pitt shows up at your door and goes, "Hey, I've got casted to play you. Let's hang out." And you go, "No, no worries. I got the entire night planned out." What does that night with Brad Pitt look like?
Whew, beer and wings.
You're on a road trip, similar to those 5 hour drives that you did back in the day. But
Yeah, I
for
do
some
those quite
reason,
often.
there's only one song that plays over and over and over again that you don't mind listening to. What's that one song?
God, how are you asking? Corny as it sounds, Don't Stop Believing by Journey.
Nice choice. Give me a number from 1 to 4.
4.
One, two, three, four. So if you had to use apple martini as a metaphor for success, how is success like an apple martini?
It is sweet and intoxicating.
Nicely done. Short and simple. Well, thank you very much for your time. That is how success is like an apple martini. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
My website, moneypartnerformula.com. Moneypartnerformula.com.
Nicely done. So for everybody, make sure you connect with Dave if you're looking for advice, consultation with regards to raising capital, building that network of investors and partners and whatnot. He's the guy to talk to. He's really good at what he does, and you're also going to have a fun time chatting with him because he is full of wisdom and lots of great stories to share. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Fong.
He's Dave. My name's Fong. Until next time, today is the day to unlock your peak potential. We'll see you later.